Hello and welcome to another beautiful and fun-filled and energy-filled, according to Gregory this morning. I woke up to a text from him saying, just know I had the energy this morning. So this is going to be, another classic unscripted episode, the official Michigan State podcast of the Field of 68. I am your host, Carter Elliott. As always, I'm here with my co-host, Greg Waddell. Greg, how are we doing today?
I do have energy this morning. I'm ready to go. I'm excited. We've been together a lot lately. We've been traveling a lot for College Hoops to Go. It's been very fun. You can watch the latest episodes on the Field of 68 channel. So we've seen a lot of each other lately, Card. I've been worried there's a little burnout, a little fatigue. No sleepers episodes on our channel the last 10 weeks or so. So, yeah, at the very least, I don't feel like we've done this setting in a while, and I'm pretty excited for it.
10 weeks or so.
Or 10 days, I'm sorry.
I'm
all wound up today.
Hey, that's okay. That's okay. But we are back to talk. Actually, me and Greg just returned from seeing the Spartans this past Sunday at Mackey, taking on the number one team in the country, Purdue. So I'd actually like to start there before we get into some other things. There's really a main topic I want to take away from this game, Greg. And I want everyone to kind of just listen to this, maybe close your eyes for about 10 to 15 seconds, a couple of deep breaths. I'm talking about those good deep breaths, like in the nose, out the mouth. Feeling really good about yourself. Mackey is an extremely tough place to play. Okay, we all know that. It was magnified even more by the fact that we were in that building. That place was loud, it was rocking, and Purdue is the best team in the country, and Michigan State is not the best team in the country. I mean, the last game we played against Purdue, we probably gave them somewhat of our best punch. I mean, we didn't have Malik Hall, of course, but I mean, it took a Herculean effort from Tyson Walker in the second half just to be in that basketball game, like just to give ourselves a chance to win. So in a game like this past Sunday where we're struggling a little bit, the tough twos aren't falling, the mid-range isn't really falling, and you have a immovable force like Zach Edey scoring 40 damn near, it's going to be extremely tough to stop that team and that man in general. So do you ever want to get blown out by anybody? No. Even on the road, you don't want to have a game where you lose by 20 points. But to be a little more optimistic and positive about this team, there were points in that second half where we battled. We cut it a little bit. I mean, we cut it to about 10 to 12. There was no necessarily quit in this basketball team. And we really had to kind of put it into perspective, I think, a little bit more. We had a vision of what this basketball team would be. And honestly, at this point of the season, I think that I would say they've exceeded expectations, even though it's only a little bit. This team has not struggled as much as I thought they would preseason. So, we're kind of at a point where this is what we expected with this basketball team. It was a tough place to play. We didn't play well. When you don't play well on the road against the number one basketball team in Mackey, you don't win basketball games, and that's all it is. There's no reason to, end the season right now, basically. And I feel like there's some of that going around the fan base right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I've always said find the middle. I think that's the appropriate reaction here. But to your point about comparing to what people should have thought in the preseason, you're right. I think I don't want to say there was doom and gloom, but there was just a lot of question marks with this roster, even from the Michigan State fan base itself, of why is Izzo approaching certain things a certain way? And, nobody knew how bad the Big Ten Conference was going to be preseason. Nobody knew how good Purdue was going to be preseason. So even given all of that, I think preseason, it was Michigan State might be a middle of the pack team. Maybe they're kind of where they're tied for fifth in the conference right now with four other teams, or three other teams, excuse me, four teams total. So fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth is where Michigan State technically is tied for in the standings with Indiana, Maryland, and Iowa. They're behind Northwestern, who beat them. They're behind Rutgers. They're behind Illinois and Purdue. So sound familiar? This is kind of like the last couple seasons, which if you look at the roster is not to be that surprising. I don't think I don't think this is a top four roster in the conference. And I've said that, and I've got crapped on. So I guess my only pushback would be I think what you're doing after the Purdue game is fair and the correct response. But I think at the same time, you can't really play both sides of like a week ago. It was like, oh, we can finish top 4 in this conference. And now like, we're still like better than I thought we would have been.
That's the thing. I still think that we can't finish top 4 in this conference.
Okay. Right now, this team is not a top 4 team in the conference. I guess that's two different things. Saying like they can finish there versus what are they right now? Like there's just been a lot of shit thrown around of like, oh, this team's in the top tier behind Purdue. They're in the next tier. Like, this team's not there.
The top four, kind of switches with the Big Ten, I feel like.
I think Illinois and Rutgers are clearly ahead at this point. I think Northwestern's ahead at this point.
What if we play Rutgers on Saturday? What if we go 2-0 against Rutgers?
That would be huge. I mean, Michigan State's best wins this year in conference play to me have been Rutgers, and I still think that win at Penn State was really, really good. You get 2 against Rutgers, that's massive, but I think, that's a matchup. Like Rutgers to me has proven over the course of the season, they're elevated. They're a really good team.
Okay. I guess I could take that. I still think that it changes so much to me with the Big Ten. Like even in the past week, I think Iowa, with the addition of Patrick McCaffrey back into the lineup, they've looked even better. Like they beat Northwestern by almost 20 last night. I mean, it was a closer game, but they pulled away at the end, and it was almost a 20-point win. So I think that just the way the conference is set up, Michigan State still can be a top 4 team. And you can make an argument for them being a top 4 team in this conference. I guess feel that way.
You can make an argument for 12 teams in this conference to be top 4 teams is the point. Like, yes, if that's our approach with Michigan State, like there will not be a moment this year that you can't make an argument that they are the 4th best team. There will also not, I think we're going to talk backcourt stuff. Like there will never be a moment where you can't make the argument that Hoggard and Walker is the best backcourt. Like if you want to say that as a Michigan State fan, there's a way you can spin it that you can. The point is this team is headed for where they've finished the last 2 seasons at this point in a weaker Big Ten than normal. Like the hope is that because the conference is so weak, because there aren't the teams that have Johnny Davis and Jaden Ivey and Keegan Murray and Kofi Coburn, that the teams with the better coach do emerge a little bit. And that's why we gave Michigan State a very real shot of doing that after, they got through the elite non-conference schedule pretty unscathed. But now that we're into the thick of it, like Michigan State's just a team right in the middle of this mess, as are some of the teams you just mentioned, as are Iowa, as are Maryland, as is Penn State. Like there's a bunch of teams in that group. And look, Michigan State's still winning games, so you got to give them credit. They haven't done the Wisconsin, Ohio State where like they've completely fallen off the wagon. But I just don't think there's really anything you can point to at this point that separates a Michigan State team from like an Iowa and a Maryland and an Indiana, right, with those teams they're tied with in the middle, that like any one of them could finish strong and finish top 4, but it's more likely that's just the middle of the pack in this messy conference.
Yeah, and I think you made a good point. It really is changing, like even like how down we were on Maryland towards the end of the year. They're starting to find something with Jameer Young and Dante Scott and Akeem Tartt and those guys. I mean, they've had some pretty good wins as of recently. Even teams like Indiana, though they lost last night to Maryland, where they looked absolutely terrible. Jalen Hood-Schifino played terrible. Maryland was able to get a win at home, and Indiana, after coming off that little win streak, they lost. So the Big Ten is just very average. It's just Purdue and basically everybody else. But I think I was a bit too optimistic thinking that Michigan State would play better going into Mackey. I'll take a little pat on the chest. I don't know what I was thinking. That was a very tough.
What'd you have it as, an 8-point Spartan victory?
I had it as a 7-point Spartan victory, pulling away late at the free throw line.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, you gotta go for your boys when you can. I don't flame you for that one, but yeah, I mean, the takeaway from me at Mackey is Purdue is way, way, way better than I thought they were. For sure. I've been skeptical, even like call them the number 1 team in the country. The country kind of stinks. Like that's been my take all year. Purdue's really, really good. They are well deserving of being the best team in the country. And that's because Zach Edey is so good. And I'd be honest, Car, this isn't a Purdue show, but I really don't like a lot of the Zach Edey dialogue that's come together. And it's not just from Michigan State fans, but like Indiana, Illinois fans are all over this too. Like there's really a campaign against this guy that he gets his own set of rules. And I don't know if we want to talk about that or not, but I'm really getting rubbed the wrong way by it at this point after seeing him in person, because I just think he's a dominant force.
Well, the thing I don't get about it is that the argument like plays by a different set of rules or is called differently. That's how every, kind of like generational size big man is called in any level of basketball. You don't call them the same way that you do other people. That's just a fact. That's not, you can't get upset at that. You can't, there's never been a Zach, or at least in a long time, I'm not gonna say never has been. There hasn't been a Zach Edey in college basketball in a long time. Like, despite the connections that people make, like the Matt Harms, the Isaac Haas's, the AJ Hammonds, this is completely on a whole different level of what Zach Edey is. That's why he's the National Player of the Year front runner. It's honestly a cheat code to have him on a basketball team. So you can't expect that player to be called the same way. And here we are, whatever the official, we're doing a special Boilermakers episode. I don't even know if UNSCRIPTED has a Boilermakers pod, but yeah, like Zach Edey is throw away the tall things, throw away doesn't get called for foul things. He's just really good. It's an art of not fouling.
Yeah. Yeah. And the more time that's removed from being in Mackey, I find myself developing even a larger respect for him the more that I'm looking back on it. But even I would just add to your statement, like, it's been a long time since we've seen a generational dominant big like Edey his size. We've never seen a big like Zach Edey. Like, somebody put the chart together of guys who are over 7'4". And you can see like the efficiency, the usage, all of that, the different quadrants of how much this player is involved offensively and how productive he is and how efficient he is. Zach Edey is quite literally off the chart. You cannot see his dot, though. You have to expand the chart just to see where this man lands in the top right corner. And then, like, way behind him in almost a different quadrant at this point is like Hashim Thabit, who was also in the running for National Player of the Year and is probably the best super big man we've ever seen. So, like, there is no guy that has played this sport at that size and been that good. Normally, guys that are that size are kind of immobile. They're either just a shot blocking, rim protecting dude who has no offensive game, or they might be a guy who has some offensive skill that has really big problems moving defensively. And Edey has none of that. Like, I can't believe Edey's able to play defense at his size the way he does. And I mean, to Purdue's credit, the way they scheme it, he doesn't have to move a lot on the perimeter. They just put him in that drop coverage and he stays there and he dares teams to beat him from mid-range. And I think we've seen at this point, Michigan State is very willing to take those mid-range shots. And if they hit them at a really high rate, they can hang in games. If they don't, that's a tough way to win. But man, people want to talk officiating with Edey. I thought Hoggard attacked the rim twice in that game. He drew 2 foul calls on Edey, and one of them was a questionable call, if we're being honest about it. And every game, there are going to be some questions that go the other way that maybe Edey should be called for. But in general, he does a phenomenal job of not fouling, mostly because teams are afraid to even attack him at the rim because of how big he is. And just last thing I would say on this, the biggest thing that drives me nuts about the way people have this Edey conversation is that because of his sheer force and how much they get him the ball, there are going to be 10 different plays a game that you can take a screenshot of on your phone and put on Twitter that look like a foul. And if you want to say are a foul, fine, but just know you can do the same thing the other route. Like, we have some Purdue fans that have started following our Sleepers account because we went to Mackey a little bit. Like, I thought it was just Michigan State, Illinois, Indiana people like, oh, look at this. Edey's hammering Mady Sissoko right here. And there was no call. There's that same thing flipping that. Like, I literally have pictures I saw yesterday of like Mady 2 hands grabbing Zach Edey's jersey as soon as he touches the ball. So, like, it goes both ways. It's impossible to guard this dude because anyone who attempts to guard him has to put 2 hands on him to even try and push him off his spot. And I thought Izzo had a good game plan. Like, he had his guys physically ready for it. He was sending doubles because you have to. And it just didn't matter because that's how good Zach Edey is. So I just beg college basketball fans for the rest of the season, for however long we have this guy in the sport. He seems like a great kid. He seems like a pretty cool personality, pretty humble guy. let's just appreciate him. Like, let's not ruin Zach Edey by being annoyed and begging that he's officiated unfairly. Like, let's just appreciate the force that he is, the fact that he's in the Big Ten, and the fact that honestly, he probably gives Matt Painter his best chance to win a national title that he's had in his career, which is pretty cool to me because I really like Matt Painter.
Yeah, I agree with all that sentiment. And just touching real quick on what Michigan State did with Zach Edey. They seem to kind of mix up some things. It was a lot of double teams. I believe you were actually keeping account of it, Greg. I'm not sure if you still have that note, kind of, but it for the most part they were sending double teams. But the one thing that can beat a double team is when you're 7-4 and you can kind of just turn and hook it up over if you really want to. And he was actually Edey, I thought, did a great job of actually being able to find that cross court pass, which led to some corner threes. And players like Brandon Newman and David Jenkins Jr., Fletcher Lawyer, those guys were able to knock down shots. This was, to me, as well oiled as Purdue has looked all year, at least in games I have watched. They did a great job of, when it was Edey's time to get it up, he got it up. But when he passed the other guys, supporting cast really stepped up, I thought. So sometimes you got to chalk it up to basketball where you got to kind of just hit that shoulder shrug. Like, that team was better than us today. They got National Player of the Year, and the other guys played better than our guys. And that's kind of why they won the basketball game. I don't know if there's necessarily any changes I might have made. I thought that maybe small ball would have been a good idea, but with the foul trouble, the way it worked out in the first half, Malik Hall picked up 2 fouls and had to come out of the game. And I just don't think small ball really worked and would have worked in this basketball game necessarily with how the fouls were kind of set up. But that's the only other kind of gripe I would have had. Otherwise, I mean, I don't really know what could have changed about the defensive game plan. Maybe better defensive rebounding as far as gang rebounding, but otherwise, I don't really know.
Yeah, I don't think it was a game plan thing really from like why did Michigan State struggle in this game? I thought Izzo had the right game plan for the most part. It's just hard to double him. Like, in order to double him, you have to have him in the right spot on the floor to send a double. And Purdue does such a good job of just getting him post position one in the center of the floor instead of on a side of the floor. So there's not really like a blind side court or side of the court that you can send a double from. And two, he just catches the ball so deep. Like, and I don't know how you prevent it. I really don't. It was kind of like the play at the end of the first Purdue Michigan State game where it's like, oh, maybe you need to put more pressure on the ball to prevent him from getting the ball so deep. I can buy that. Like, if you're saying we just need to press a Purdue team, if you have the dogs to do that, or just get in their shit, or as soon as they cross half court, that might be the way to guard them. But trying to wall up Zach Edey is impossible. Trying to prevent Zach Edey from just getting a foot from the basket is impossible without picking up a foul from shoving him with 2 hands. So I give Painter a ton of credit because he knows how to get him the ball in the center of the floor in ways that make him essentially unguardable. And I don't think there was much Izzo could have done here other than hope some guys played better offensively. Honestly, like, AJ had a great game. Let me say that unequivocally. He had a great game, 26-4. One of those games where like AJ's just up for the fight. Like, he seems to show up.
26,
20 points, 6 assists. And
my apologies.
But efficient too, 6 for 10 from the floor. And it just, I mean, that's kind of the story of AJ to me. Like, in the bright moments, he usually shows up. And this was a bright moment. I mean, that was a loud, intimidating place to play, and he was there from start to finish. I don't really think anybody else showed up, at least offensively. Joey was pretty non-existent, only 4 shot attempts. Tyson Walker, 4 for 11, another one of those kind of like around 10 points a game games where when Michigan State's been great, they've had him closer to 20 points a game. Everybody on the bench was who they are. Malik Hall had 8 points in 21 minutes. Other than that, you didn't really get much. Jaden Akins, finally showed up, at least in the box score offensively, but even watching the game, to me, like, we still have more of the Akins problems of what are these shots that he's taking. It doesn't really feel within the flow of everything when he's getting more and more involved. So I don't know. Did Michigan State play their best game? No, not at all. But it's really hard to play your best game against Purdue. And I thought, honestly, Purdue probably did play their A game here. Like, you caught the best team in the country at home playing their best game. I don't really think there's much anybody in the Big Ten can do about that.
Yeah, 100%. And before we move on to the, one of your favorite conversations in all of college basketball, the Big Ten backcourt conversation, I do want to touch on something real quick with Jaden Akins. Looking back, so when he had that stretch where he was struggling a little bit earlier in the year, we could actually, I literally think I can go back to the unscripted episode where we talked about it. And I literally said that it would be about simplifying and shot selection. And then he had that stretch of a couple games in that stretch where he was, 12 points a game, shooting over 40, shooting almost 50%, honestly, from 3-point line. Like, he was really shooting the ball extremely well. And I thought he was just doing a great job of having great shot selection. I think his shot selection kind of went back to that old, like, really, really tough two. Like, I remember one possession kind of vividly. It was a fast break, and there was one guy back. I want to say it was Fletcher Lawyer or Braden Smith. And it was one-on-one and outlet pass. And he pulled up for a mid-range two. And the shot selection, I think, sometimes can waver a little bit with him. And, I think, honestly, he's been getting a little bit more crap from some people these past couple games with how he's played. I think he's played particularly well on both sides of the ball. I started to see flashes of that, Izzo referring to him as being the best two-way player that he's had in a while.
Since Gary Harris was what we were told in the offseason.
Yeah, I saw some flashes of that these past couple games with how he's been playing, but I think there was a little bit waiver of the shot selection. I think frustration set in at some point with him. It seemed that he was a little dejected on the bench with his play, which, he's a competitor. He wants to play well, and he wasn't playing well. So just to touch on that real quick, I think, once again, him having better shot selection will lead to better play for him and lead to less frustration.
That's fair. I would just say he's not the best two-way player on this team. He's not the best two-way guard on this team. That's Tyson Walker.
Tyson Walker.
Like, yeah. I don't even get where the best two-way guy since Gary Harris comes from. And that was the thing of the offseason. He's not that. He's not that compared to Walker. Akins is we love Akins. We're Akins guys here. But I just am getting to the point where it's just all that talent is not coming together in the way that it should production wise, given the larger opportunity.
But real quick here, what does that production look like to you? Because in my eyes, he's been productive the past 5 games. The stats back that up on both sides of the ball.
Can we just compare him to why not focus on the game we just watched? Compare him to the Purdue guards. And you want maybe some of this, okay, it's opportunity, right? Because I get it. When you're the third guard and you're playing next to Hoggard and Walker, whatever, you're going to be the 5th option on the floor.
Or you're playing with Zach Edey.
But I guess the point, we've watched Purdue, Edey gets the ball every single play. It's not these guys aren't necessarily running, Braden Smith's not running a bunch of actions to score. But to me, Smith and Lawyer are so far ahead just game flow wise of how to play basketball than Akins is.
No, I disagree.
Not
Braden Smith. We need to have a Braden Smith conversation eventually.
Braden Smith hasn't been good in the 2 Michigan State games, but he's damn near had some triple doubles this year.
Tum Nairn with a soul patch.
That's crazy. That's super crazy.
It's not that good. That's the reason why I'm not buying Purdue.
He's super.
That guards win in March, and that backcourt is not striking me as a backcourt that's going to win 6 straight games.
Okay, I would take that backcourt. I would take a lot of backcourts over the Michigan State backcourt right now.
I know you would, but that's a great transition. Thank you for that lob into this discussion. The official unscripted podcast Big Ten backcourt rankings. Now, for anyone who follows Sleepers, myself, Gregory, you know that the backcourt conversation and how Michigan State's backcourt stacks up against others in the conference kind of works out. So we figured it was time to have a check-in on this on February 1st. By the way, happy Black History Month to everybody out there. Make sure you celebrate. I like my reparations as well. Let's go into how do you want to do this, Greg? Do you have a list right now, or do you want me to go through Big Ten teams and kind of you tell me if that backcourt's better than ours?
I have my list, and I think I can probably frame this up, and then I'd get your answer and my answer and see how far off we are here. But this comes from a place of I've been getting chirped. I've been getting chirped all season because preseason, we had I basically just like, is AJ Hoggard better than Boo Buie? And then Jalen Pickett was also thrown in that conversation before anybody realized how good Jalen Pickett is. I think we had one other guard I'm not remembering that was also thrown into that conversation, but it was mostly like Hoggard versus Buie. Everybody clowning me. Like,
was it Xavier Johnson?
Xavier Johnson, yeah, which he's hurt now, so we have to just remove him from the conversation. But let me also say, like, by and large, AJ Hoggard's been great this season. Like, I think you've gotten an A out of AJ Hoggard from what I have thought is possible from AJ Hoggard as a player. So this is not to like diss on him that he's been bad, but like just like 2 weeks ago, I've got people like bringing up mentions from July, like taking a victory lap that AJ Hoggard's better than Boo Buie, while Northwestern's ahead in the standings, beat Michigan State, and Boo Buie's been hella productive. So I'm really confused about it all. I think any fan base from any of these teams, again, can make an argument that they are the best in this rankings. And at this point, I feel like there's no convincing Michigan State fans that there's any backcourt that's better than their two guys. But for the sake of the exercise, you have to remove Purdue entirely because their team's too good and they just play a different brand of basketball given that they have Zach Edey. There would be no way to evaluate Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith among these other guys. So
can I say one quick comment, please?
Yeah.
Are Boo Buie stats really that much better than AJ's?
Yeah.
Isn't he shooting like 30% from three and 20% from three and 30 from the field?
He's shooting 38% from the field, 90% from free throw, and 28% from three. Let's pull up AJ's because sometimes
that told me everything I need to know when you mentioned free throw percentage before you mentioned 3-point percentage.
So when we talk stats, it's like people don't know who AJ Hoggard is. Like, okay, he's 3 points better from the field than Boo Buie. There's not a huge difference between being a 41% shooter from the field and a 38% shooter from the field. He's 2 points better from 3-point range. There is essentially no difference between being a 30% shooter from three and a 28% shooter from three. Remind you, Boo Buie shoots like 6 threes a game. AJ Hoggard shoots maybe 1 to 2. Like, who's the better shooter based on volume when they shoot almost identical percentages? Boo Buie gets to the line a fuck ton and makes 10% better than AJ Hoggard does. Talk about missing free throws late in games. That's come back to bite him a bunch of times in the last 3 weeks. So, like, I don't know. Like, if that's your main argument, is Hoggard's way more efficient than Boo Buie? They're not. They're both inefficient guys. Just one guy gets you 15 a night. Like,
more assists. And what's AJ give me? What, 12 and 6, 12 and 7?
Look, if the larger conversation is beyond Hoggard too, because this came from a best backcourt. This is not just Hoggard versus Buie. But if I was going to just do Hoggard versus Buie, my answer would be these guys are identical. They're identical in terms of the value they bring to a basketball team. Like, Michigan State acts like Boo Buie's 3 tiers behind Hoggard. I don't know any Northwestern fans, but maybe Northwestern fans would act like Hoggard's 3 tiers behind Boo Buie. I don't know. They're identical guys. They're both inefficient dudes who have been pretty consistently productive this year. You know what you're getting out of them. And when their teams have won, it's because they've been great. Like, Northwestern, again, remind you, is ahead of Michigan State in the standings because they went to Breslin and beat Michigan State. So this backcourt's been great. Like, look at who else is on that Northwestern team. And Northwestern's going to make the NCAA tournament because their backcourt's been dope.
Don't jump the gun.
I don't think I am jumping the gun. Like, why is Northwestern good? Because Northwestern is good at this point. They're good because Buie and Audige are good. Right. So, like, I don't know. I don't get why we're still like, I don't get why we're victory lapping that. But
okay, go ahead and get back to your list, man.
My 4 teams that I put in the same category to choose from are Michigan State, Hoggard, and Walker. Penn State, Pickett, and we chose Winter for this, which I think is the worst option we could have chose, but probably the fairest based on position. Boo Buie and Audige from Northwestern, and then Mulcahy and Cam Spencer from Rutgers. Those are the 4 I think are in the same tier of quote unquote best backcourt in the Big Ten if you remove Purdue from the conversation. How would you stack rank those four?
I'd have Penn State first.
Just because you take Pickett and anybody over the other three?
Yeah, I think Pickett's been amazing enough by himself that whether you put Winter next to him or I think the other option would have been Funk next to him.
If you put Funk, that's a runaway to me.
Yeah, so I think it's an argument with Winter, but I take Penn State one. I take Michigan State second. Because I think I would have took Rutgers, but I think Mulcahy has struggled a little bit this year. So
in what way for Mulcahy?
I thought his stats would be a little bit better. If I'm not mistaken, he struggled from the field, I know for sure.
42% from the field, 2 points higher than AJ Hoggard, 37% from three, 7 points higher than AJ Hoggard, 90% from free throw, 10 points higher than AJ Hoggard.
What are his stats?
He is 9.1 points, 4.8 assists, and 3.6 rebounds, 1.6 steals.
Yeah, that's very average to me. So I'll take Michigan State second. I will do. That's tough. I'll actually do Northwestern third. I'll do Northwestern third and Rutgers fourth.
Okay. So then, given the way you've ranked them, I think using efficiency as a feather in your cap in your argument for Michigan State over anyone seems to have been thrown out the window.
I'm not using efficiency.
I mean, you use that relative between Michigan State and Northwestern, and you just said
Mulcahy's bad from the floor. I was simply asking.
Okay. I mean, you just said Mulcahy's been bad from the floor.
In my eyes, I didn't expect. Yeah, I think Mulcahy has been bad from the floor.
But that means not percentage-wise? That just means he's not scoring enough?
I thought he would be better from the floor. I thought he'd be scoring more. I don't know. Maybe a little bit of preseason expectations weigh into this for me because you know how high I am on Paul Mulcahy. And I think he's relative to what I thought he would be. I think he's been bad this year.
Okay. I mean, the other guy in the Rutgers backcourt is Cam Spencer, who's literally like very close to being a 50-40-90 guy, which is insane. I mean, he's 13 points a game, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 2.5 steals, shooting 44% from the floor, 42% from 3, and 92% from free throw. Like, holy crap, man. Like, that's a guy who, honestly, depending on where Rutgers finishes, like, could warrant first team all conference to me. It's crazy. But yeah, so my list would go Pickett and anybody from Penn State 1. He's that good. You have to.
We agree.
Yeah, we agree. Two is Rutgers. I think that 1, like you look at, I don't want to just use standings as stuff, but like the reason Rutgers is good is because those guys are so efficient. And they both combined, they end up getting you, what is this, 8.5 assists a game between the two of them. Like they don't have one guy going for 7 like AJ is, but they get you there. And they're pickpockets too. They get you over 4 steals a game. I like that group a lot. And then I have Michigan State and Northwestern in a dead tie. I literally will not choose one. I think those backcourts are essentially exactly the same. I give Northwestern's maybe an edge because the guys playing with that Northwestern backcourt are worse than Michigan State's front court. As crazy as that sounds. Like there is no Joey Hauser in the Northwestern front court. There isn't even a Jaden Akins on the Northwestern wing. Like Matthew Nicholson is probably better than Madi Sissoko, but like not by much. And Northwestern has been a better team and has a head-to-head win over Michigan State.
Has the Northwestern schedule, Big Ten schedule, also been a little bit softer compared to? If I'm not mistaken, because Michigan State is a little front. Like we have this stretch coming up with a lot of like winnable games.
I don't think you can really say that right now because Northwestern won at Assembly Hall and at the Brez.
True.
So like they've won games they shouldn't because their backcourt is good. Like they beat Illinois by 13 at home. Like
Chase Audige being one of the best two-way, being honestly the best two-way player in conference is not something I saw happening.
No, it's insane. It's genuinely
crazy.
insane. It's insane. So again, that none of that's meant with disrespect, but like I am baffled why anybody's victory lapping me on that right now. Because
nothing's with disrespect. One of the great things that has happened in my podcast season, I call this like my second, I don't know, call this my second or third season podcasting. My favorite thing that I've come up with this season, this make or break this contract year, is the make an argument phrase. I love it. You can make an argument.
So much. It drives
I
me
love
nuts. It drives me nuts, man. It's the worst.
Why?
Because it's the worst. It allows you to weasel out of anything that I can get you with stats, with like actual fact-based reasoning.
Mm-mm. That's not what it is. It's more so of a cognitive tool to use to be like, I agree with your point. I see your point. I think my point's correct, but I respect your point.
Right. But that's, again, you can now use that on anything you say that is not based in fact or numbers or reasoning. And I just have to accept it. Like, well, you could make an argument. Like, I don't know, man. Who am I making an argument for? I can make an argument. Terrence Williams.
So you have Michigan State third. I have them second.
I'm tied for third with an asterisk and a tiebreaker. They're losing to Northwestern because they lost the head-to-head.
Okay.
So also the final thing on this that we can either end the show or move on. When this recirculated back this week, when I put the blind stats up, by the way, a lot of responses from people like at the national level. No one from the national level picked Michigan State. Everyone from Michigan State picked Michigan State, which I found really interesting.
Well, that's because you can look up.
It's because you can look up. Two, the biggest, like a lot of comments, the biggest comment reason why people were trying to like weasel Michigan State ahead of the others was, quote unquote, there's two sides of the floor and these guys are better defensively, when according to advanced metrics, that is just not true at all. So I just want to throw that out. Like, I want Michigan State fans to like maybe just take a second to consider the fact that these guys are not the defensive monsters that you've made them out to be in your heads. They are objectively worse defensively than both Northwestern and Rutgers by a lot. And like just individually, if you look at like guards only, where they rank on defensive efficiency, Hogard and Walker are a step behind Doug McDaniel and Kobe Buffkin. And those guys are not good defensively. So just like, if I was wrong, if they were great defensively, I'd be saying it. I don't know where this misconception that those guys are elite defenders has come from.
Which metrics are you referring to? KP?
I don't know where they pull from. It's like somebody pulled the conference only like defensive rating stuff.
Oh, I think that was Basketball Jones. Was that who that was?
It's one of those charts that he pulls, but I think it was different than Basketball.
That's he pulls from KP, I believe. So
okay,
that's a discussion for another day.
You're out on Ken Pop?
Yeah, he's taking the Brady approach. It's time to hang it up. Real quick before we do get out of here, since I have the Big Ten teams up here, can I just do a quick which backcourt you're taking?
Yes.
Or is that or is the tiers that you gave me, you're not taking any other teams' backcourts over Michigan State's?
I don't think I would take anything underneath it other than Purdue. But again, I removed Purdue from the combo.
Is Maryland not in the combo at all for you?
I think Jameer Young's been great, but I don't like their second guy, which I guess would be Hakeem Hart.
Yeah, Hakeem Hart, he's been playing better as of late. I don't even know, Iowa I thought would be closer up there, but again, stats might not back this up, but personally, I don't think Tony Perkins has had a good year.
No, Perkins has been bad.
Yeah, okay, so that stats back that up as well. Even though Aaron Eulis has showed some things these past couple games, I've actually seen they might have something there, but let's see, Penn State, Indiana.
You can't without Xavier. It's just impossible to do. Like right now, their backcourt's just Hood Schifino, and he essentially lost them the game last night at Maryland. Like he was just so bad. They had no chance to win that game.
Oh, he was terrible.
Yeah,
absolutely terrible. They also need to bench Race Thompson. He doesn't look right. And I'm sure.
Does he ever look right though?
No, never does. Well, let's not disrespect our T-shirt like that.
Oh, you're right.
Because this is a podcast with two guys that own Race Thompson jersey T-shirts. That's a fact.
That's our lowest moment.
That is our lowest. But real quick before we get out of here, I do want to touch on the fact that Michigan State does have somewhat of an easier schedule coming up here. So I feel like we got to take advantage of this. Like, we play Rutgers this Saturday, not at the Rack, by the way. The game's at MSG. So I feel like you got to take advantage of that. Played Maryland at home at Ohio State. Ohio State's not a good basketball team. Bryce Sensabaugh's a bucket. Played Minnesota at
He's
home.
Just a bucket, though. Just a bucket.
Then we travel to Ann Arbor for in Michigan right now. Who knows with that basketball team? They seem like they are absolutely broken. So there's a very winnable stretch coming up here that I think we need to take advantage of. I think that, just looking forward, let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's very possible in the next 7 or 8 we go 6-2. And I think that would get it done. So
you can make an argument.
Man, that sucks when that backfires. But do you have any closing arguments, Greg?
I think you're right about the schedule. It's open. And not playing at the Rack or at Jersey Mike's is a massive break. And I guess Michigan State's had a difficult schedule. Nowhere near as difficult as we thought, just for the record. Gonzaga, Kentucky, Villanova all stink. But those, you're not at the Rack. It's at Madison Square Garden. You can win that game. If it was the Rack, we chalk that up as a loss. You should beat Maryland at home. At Ohio State, I think Ohio State has zero pulse whatsoever. I think they're just losing basketball players individually out to get buckets.
They're a little tougher at home, though.
A smidge. I would say Michigan State can win that game, if not should win that game. Minnesota is a win. To me, the big two are Michigan, Indiana. What do you do with those two? Because you should beat Michigan right now. Michigan stinks. I think they're a dead basketball team. That's still a month away, so who knows if they'll be revived and come back to life or what. These two teams have split, the last 2 years? So yeah. In Hunter Dickinson's career, they've split every year. We'll see. And then Indiana, to me, is a team that as much as you want to shit on them, Trace is playing as good as anybody in the country that's not Zach Edey. So hopefully you take care of that at home. You're right. If that goes 4-2, you feel good about that stretch. Starts with Rutgers.
I agree. So starts to Saturday. Take advantage of playing Madison Square Garden. Let's get a win and get some momentum coming into the Big Ten tournament the rest of the year, and let the Spartan chips fall where they may. My last statement that I just want to say is that it's going to be okay, and this basketball team is going to be okay. We'll be all right. That's all I want to say. For Carter Elliott, for Greg Waddell, I'm scripted out.